James stood on the edge of the road, his head bowed and fists clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. Cars rushed by, people hurried along, but his gaze was locked on nothingness. Everything he once held dear had crumbled to dust. His career, his family, his sense of purpose, all of it seemed to vanish without a trace. He had lost his job a month ago. The opportunities he had chased for years collapsed in a single day. Without an income, he couldn't keep his house and now lived in a tiny rented room that felt more like a closet. Each day blended into the next, gray, joyless, like a scorched field stripped of life. But the worst part wasn't his circumstances. It was the emptiness gnawing at him from within. James had always prided himself on his strength, his ability to overcome any challenge on his own. But the harder he tried, the deeper he sank into despair. "Why, God?" His voice was hoarse and strained. "Why am I alone? Why does it hurt so much?" There was no answer, only the cold wind tearing through his hair, indifferent to his suffering. Every night James tried to pray, but the words stuck in his throat, twisted into bitterness and frustration. He didn't know how to pray. He didn't even know if anyone was listening. On the rare occasions when sleep finally claimed him, he dreamed strange dreams. In them, he wandered through a thick, impenetrable fog, unable to see anything around him. Occasionally, he would catch a glimpse of a faint light somewhere ahead, but every time he tried to follow it, the light would disappear. One rainy evening, he stepped into a small church. He was only looking for shelter from the downpour. Inside, it was warm and quiet. Light filtered through stained glass windows, painting colorful patterns across the wooden floor. "Why are you here, son?" A gentle voice startled him. It was an old man with kind eyes holding a candle in his hand. I don't know," James replied, his gaze dropping to the ground. "I'm just lost." The old man nodded as if he understood perfectly. "Sometimes, to find the way, you first need to realize you are truly lost. Perhaps you've been searching in all the wrong places." Those words clung to James's mind. He didn't know how to respond, but something inside him trembled, a tiny spark he couldn't yet understand. That night, sleep escaped him once more. James lay on the hard mattress, eyes fixed on the darkened ceiling. His mind was a storm of confusion and unanswered questions. One word echoed in his thoughts over and over: lost. "God, if you're there, if you really exist, help me," he whispered, his voice trembling with exhaustion and longing. He didn't expect anything to change. His plea was more like a desperate gasp for air than a prayer, but something was different this time. It wasn't a voice nor a vision, just a faint, indescribable warmth that seemed to touch his heart, a feeling of comfort that shouldn't have been there. For the first time in months, James felt something more than emptiness. He felt hope. The days that followed were still difficult. His circumstances hadn't improved. Yet, something inside him was changing, as if a small light had been ignited within his soul. He found himself drawn to the Bible, though he barely understood its words. But each passage seemed to speak directly to his pain, his confusion, his longing. The old man's words haunted him. "Perhaps you've been searching in all the wrong places." What if it was true? What if the peace he sought couldn't be found through success, wealth, or control over his life? James began to pray each night, not with eloquent words, but with raw, honest cries from his soul. And although he still struggled, he felt something he hadn't felt before, a sense of being heard. Weeks passed, and James's life still hadn't improved in material ways. He remained jobless, his finances dwindling to nothing. Yet in the depths of his struggle, something else was growing. He continued to pray, pouring out his heart each night. The pain was still there, but now it felt bearable, as if he wasn't carrying it alone. The warmth he had felt that first night continued to flicker within him, never leaving, even when he felt most lost. One cold morning, James returned to the small church. The old man was there, lighting candles before the altar. His hands trembled slightly, but his eyes were just as gentle. "You're back," the old man said with a smile. "I've been trying to find something," James admitted. "Or someone, I'm not even sure anymore." "Sometimes the search itself is the answer," the old man replied. "We spend so much time running after what we think we need that we forget to stop and listen." "Listen to what?" James asked, his voice tight with frustration. "To the quiet, to the voice that speaks in silence," the old man said softly. "God doesn't always speak through thunder and lightning. Sometimes he whispers, and it's only when we let go of our own noise that we hear him." The words settled in James's heart like a seed, and for the first time he allowed himself to be still, to listen. James began to embrace silence. Every morning he would sit in the dim light of his tiny room and just breathe. It was hard at first. His thoughts raced, his worries screamed for attention. But little by little he learned to quiet his mind. He read the Bible not out of obligation but out of yearning. Words that once seemed lifeless now carried weight and meaning. His prayers transformed from desperate cries to heartfelt conversations. And the more he listened, the clearer the whispers became. One night during prayer, a thought entered his mind not as a voice but as a realization. "You are not alone. You never were." The tears came freely. Tears of relief, of surrender, of a broken heart finally mended by something greater than himself. His pain was still there, but it no longer ruled him. The darkness of his life had not disappeared, but a light now shone within him, and it was stronger than anything he had ever known. James returned to the church often. The old man continued to guide him, but now James saw something he hadn't before. The man's joy was not in preaching, but in simply being there, a steady, quiet presence, just like God. James's life was no longer about searching for success or recognition. His heart was filled with a new kind of strength, and that strength inspired him to help others who felt lost. He began volunteering at the church, offering a kind word, a listening ear, and sometimes just a silent prayer. Each encounter reminded him of his own journey and how even the smallest kindness could be a light in someone's darkness. "You have found the way," the old man told him one evening. "Now go and share that light with others." James nodded, his eyes glistening with gratitude, for he had not only found his faith, he had found his purpose. And he would never be lost again.